Alright guys, so as highly requested, we are going to be covering the best divine combo cards for every character in Gekishin Squadra. There's actually a lot of changes because of how the divine combo cards were adjusted in Season 3 of Gekishin. Of course, I will be leaving a link to the patch notes in the comment section below or in the description, one of the two. And not only are we going to go over the cards for every character, but I will also be talking about my own presets that I use at the end of the video in case you're curious and want to know which ones you might use yourself. To cover the basis of what has changed, Build Up and Solid Barrier are the two biggest changes because they both got nerfed, which means that a lot of characters actually prefer alternative cards in comparison to that. So we do need to keep that in mind when it comes to this Season 3 meta, is that a lot of characters who ran Build Up or Solid Barrier just may not run those cards anymore. But without further ado, let's hop right into it, and we'll be going from Super Saiyan Goku all the way to Super Vegito. So Super Saiyan Goku is able to use, in my opinion, two different builds, and we'll go over both of them. One of them is a more consistent build, and then the second one is a more, higher risk, higher reward one. And the first one is Too Easy, Giant Slayer, and Defense Step. You'll actually see this build on a lot of different DPSs. This build does have two defense cards, which will give you a slight defense boost. That is pretty important in this current era. And of course, with Giant Slayer, you're able to basically do consistent damage to your enemies. I find this one to be very effective for Goku specifically. Then, of course, we do also have the other option to go Super Snowball for your first card, then Steel Skin for your second card, basically switching the offense and defensive card in slot 1 and slot 2. Now, the reason why this is less consistent is because, of course, while Super Snowball may yield higher damage in a lot of situations, you are able to lose it, and a lot of characters now are a lot squishier. So because of the lack of build-up, your characters are just gonna be easier to get killed. And Super Saiyan Goku, of course, is not a character that is exempt to that. So that's why a lot of people actually do like to run a Too Easy and Giant Slayer, because Giant Slayer is just always going to be active whenever you're in a team fight. Then for the third card, I would say Defense Step is king. Defense Step you're going to see on a lot of different characters. It gives you the equivalent buff to a Barrier, but it is on command by using Vanish. And it is a very consistent tool as well in terms of overall defense. Now, if you still want to go like extra offense, you do have the option for Backstab, but I just personally wouldn't recommend it compared to Defense Step. It just depends on what you're feeling like. The Limit Breaking Jump is not really as needed as much on Super Saiyan Goku because he does have a lot of escapist options, I feel like, and the value that you get from Defense Step is just too high. But in all questions, I would say the more consistent best build would be Too Easy, Giant Slayer, and Defensive Step. Super Saiyan Vegeta is a little different from other tanks as he actually has a lot of ways to consistently restore his armor throughout a fight through his skill 1, his skill 3, and his ultimates. So because of that, I feel like Vegeta is able to run a build more akin to a DPS because of the fact that he might not need as much tanking necessarily, right? Although it is still really good to be defensive. Too Easy, Giant Slayer, and Defense Step I think is the best build for him. Now, you are able to run Build Up if you really want to. I just don't really think it's worth it at this point. And I would also say for the second card, if you really want to go full defense, you could run Steel Skin on Super Saiyan Vegeta. But I think that you're just sacrificing, damage that could be gone, that you're just leaving away on the table. That you don't necessarily need all three of these green cards for Super Saiyan Vegeta specifically. Then Defense Step, like I said, is king. There's not really a reason to run another card on this Super Saiyan Vegeta, at least in my personal opinion. So that is what I would say is the best build for him overall. Alright, so I think Krillin is pretty straightforward with his divine combo cards. I would actually end up running Strategic Escape, Solid Barrier, and Limit Breaking Jump. This is more of a Krillin that is moving around the map and trying to hit towers, setting mines, being, maybe a little sneaky. I think that's probably one of the better ways to play Krillin, honestly. Now, you could also switch over to Gekishin High at the end of matches if you're just trying to go ahead and melt down towers. Krillin doesn't really have a lot of kind of moves to let him escape situations. So that's why I do prefer limit breaking jump. However, defensive step is still a really good option on top of that. And that's what I would run for him. Honestly, if you want to go like a DPS kind of Krillin build, you could go Snowball and then maybe even Backstab. But I just don't think that is worth it in comparison to running Stratascape, Solid Barrier, and then Limit Breaking Jump, which again does give you that double vanish. And I find that to be very useful in this guy, but that's my recommendation for Krillin. Good news for Piccolo fans is that there is literally only one way to build this guy. That would be a Super Snowball, Solid Barrier, and Limit Breaking Jump. He had stayed the same throughout all 3 of the seasons, and that's just because of how his design is. He has very little HP, so he doesn't switch over to Steel Skin no matter what. He has no defense up in any of his skills, and his main purpose is to use the Special Beam Cannon, really, nuke from afar. He's gonna be better with Super Snowball overall, especially when we consider like boss secure as well. I think that this guy is going to be using this quite consistently. Limit breaking jump is going to be very useful for him because again, defense step, while nice, I think having the extra escapability for Piccolo will be huge in many situations, especially ones where he may not be able to reach an escape route with his skill 3, but this is what I would run on Piccolo. So for Kid Gohan, what I usually like to go with this guy is Strategic Escape, Steel Skin, and Defense Step. Now, Stratascape, I think it's pretty commonly known why it's good, giving you the extra movement speed when you're faced against an enemy hero. But you might ask, why Steel Skin since he doesn't have that much HP? The reason for that is because he does give himself a lot of defense in his passive. His passive skill does give him extra defense when he's next to an ally, but on top of that, his skill 3 does give himself and other allies around him extra energy defense, which works pretty well with his passive and Steel Skin, so that's why I do like this card on him. It makes him pretty decently tanky. Then we also have Defense Step. I just like Defense Step as a card overall. Gohan doesn't really have trouble escaping. He has skill 2 available. He has his teleport with skill 3. He'll be fine without needing an extra vanish jump, and having the extra barrier defense step essentially will be really good for him. Now, you could go build up on his first card if you really wanted to, but again, I just think that it's not worth it in comparison to having something more consistent like Stratascape, and then maybe you're worried about, farming around the map a little more than you need to be, because build up takes so much investment. So that's why I do like this build over that. So Dabura runs full defense. You absolutely need that because this guy is just in your face, constantly attacking, wants to build his gauge up, and really he just needs it to survive. There's a lot of characters who are able to just kind of kill him very easily, if not just one shot him, even like, well, especially like Kale, but like Super Saiyan 3 Goku, or even just like Super Saiyan Goku, even like Oops. Like I feel like this guy gets melted, right? Without full defense cards, you just really badly need that to give him the full defensive boost that you have when you have all defense. And too easy is actually pretty decent for him. Of course, it is pretty much the only option though. Build up is not as good anymore, and you pretty much just put too much investment into it. Steel Skin is nice, and then Defense Step as well. Ideally, this guy would actually use Limit Breaking Jump in my opinion, but again, I feel like Defense Step is just also way too good, even though this guy doesn't have any escapage options outside of just like flying away normally. So this is what I would run for Dabura personally. It just helps him out in the long run. So for Majin Buu, what I do usually end up going is Strategic Escape, Steel Skin, and Defense Step. I do like Steel Skin on this guy because I feel like he has a lot of HP to play around with when we consider his heal. He has multiple ways of healing. He also does have the ability to slow enemies down, which makes it pretty easy for him to get out of situations. If not, you also have skill 3 whenever you do use it. Overall, Buu is honestly just like pretty simple to build with these Divine cards, and he's a lot of fun. So when it comes to Zamasu, I think there's 2 builds that are appropriate for him depending on the circumstance. Firstly, we do have Strategic Escape, Steel Skin, and Defense Step. Again, I don't think build up is worth really considering at this point. So steel skin and defense step, I just think will allow him to consistently be good in these circumstances. And strategic escape will be nice just in terms of escapage, or maybe if you're even trying to rap with Zamasu. Now, another build that you do have available for you is a more offensive build, and I would think this one would be more common if you get especially Superstar Zamasu, in which case I think you could run 2 easy then Giant Slayer on this guy. 2 easy will still give you that defensive consistency from having, you know, this effect, but also the 2 defense cards, which is nice. But also Giant Slayer just giving you that extra boost in damage. Superstar Zamasu could actually do some pretty decent damage when we consider his skill 3 is super started, and could be a little bit of a menace. So make sure you watch out for that, but also if you're a Zamasu main, do also keep that in mind. So with season 3, Kale's actually super crazy again, and I do think that she ends up using her season 1 build for the most part, which is super snowball, solid barrier, and then limit breaking jump. Now, the reason why she still uses solid barrier is because limit breaking jump is extremely important on her because of her transformation. When Kale transforms, her vanishes not only restore, but her vanishes turn into staggers. So it is like a lunge forward that staggers the enemy. That is very oppressive, and if you have 2 of those, you're doing some very nasty things, and you're able to get free snowball stacks. However, she still needs barrier because she needs to defend herself in a major way that is not defensive step, and this is just the second best option really. Snowball, very easy to farm with her. Once you get snowball stacks up, she's crazy. Now, if you want to be actually insane, you could actually end up running Giant Slayer. Giant Slayer, Snowball, and limit breaking jump. Again, that's just like if you're really insane and you're just like, yeah, I'm just gonna have fun, turn my brain off and just one shot everything. But it is a little dangerous because they see you don't have solid barrier. You are able to get jumped very easily, and whenever someone teases a Kale, you should jump a Kale because she is the most dangerous kind of character on that team potentially if you let her get the leeway. Now, if you do have like the vanishing step divine draw, you could probably go defense step instead of limit breaking jump on her because it won't be as necessary to have the double vanish since, you know, you just restore your vanish so often, and defense step could be nice. But yeah, I guess technically you could also use pursuer, but I don't think like that'll only be good if you're like skill 3, skill 1, and then you use your skill 2 to finish someone off. I don't know, because you need to land 2 skills ahead of time. But that's pretty much it for Kale. Very busted character right now. Alright, so for Diamond Goku, I do think he actually runs a similar build to what he has been, which is Snowball, Solid Barrier, and Backstab. Now, one of the reasons why he doesn't need defense step, I think, as much as other characters, is because he has Powerful Dance. If you guys don't know what Powerful Dance does, it basically halves the first hit of damage that you take, gives him strike defense up and energy defense up, and he gets movement speed up. All of those effects, he's able to escape situations very, very easily to where, well, Solid Barrier will still be useful in times that he gets caught. If you get Solid Barrier hit and you're in a dangerous spot, you just Powerful Dance out of there. Goodbye. Bye. Right? Well, you know, you're not always going to have Powerful Dance just, you know, ready off the fly and just like predict what the enemy might do. He doesn't necessarily need defense step as much. So yeah, and of course, you know, Snowball is going to be pretty good on him. Also, Backstab, he's able to take advantage of just by hiding in clouds, throwing his, you know, bomb and, you know, the mine, or not the mine, the lightning. Just pretty crazy what he's able to do with Backstab. Diamond Goku is a little rat, a little menace, and he's still very good. Frieza pretty much is good for backdooring, I feel like, at this point. And you could use him pretty decently for bosses as well, or even protecting your own tower. But it is easy to counter this guy, so you want to make sure you may get in and out of a lot of situations, take advantage of his movement speed as well. For Frieza, I actually do end up running Strategic Escape, Solid Barrier, and then Limit Breaking Jump. Now, the reason why I use Solid Barrier on Frieza is because his HP is just so absurd. Look at the HP, level 1. Even like we can increase this guy's HP to like level 9. His HP is so little compared to most other characters. It's just pretty insane, unfortunately for this guy. So he can't really run Steel Skin. I feel like he does actually want double blues, and the reason why he wants like the double blue card is because it shortens cooldowns, and this guy has absurdly long cooldowns on his skills. It is super useful to get that slight cooldown reduction for him. Any second saved does count, especially, you know, when you're recalling Zarba to Dodoria, you're waiting for like 13-15 seconds for them to return. It is very annoying, and if they're killed, that really does suck on top of that. So you really actually do get a benefit from also having this setup as well, and that's what I would personally run on Frieza. Next, we're on Lord Bojack here, the GOAT of Season 2. When this guy got buffed, he's pretty insane, and right now, he's still pretty good. So, in terms of his build, I actually think Snowball, Giant Slayer, and Defense Step is actually going to be a pretty effective option for him. So you are able to run Solid Barrier if you just want to be extra safe. Steel Skin is not as, you know, important on him, I feel like, because he doesn't get any defense up in his kit anyways, so you probably would just go with Barrier. But the reason why I think a lot of people end up picking Giant Slayer with this guy is because he has so much coverage. He stands back a crazy amount in comparison to the field. Like, look how wide his range is for his rush attacks. Very, very crazy. And I feel like a lot of times this guy is able to stay away from a lot of the big massive damage that you may take. However, again, if you want to be really safe, I think Solid Barrier is pretty good. But a damage build like this is actually pretty effective on this guy. Baby is the only character you're going to hear me say go full damage on. Snowball, Giant Slayer, and Pursuer. Now, the reason why this guy does run full red cards is because not only does he just not have to worry about damage a lot of the times when he's possessed, but his healing scales based off the damage he does on those cover rush attacks. So, of course, if this guy has Snowball stacks especially, but just a full damage build doing as much damage as possible, this guy's going to be making a character like Broly or, you know, Toppo or even Super Vegito just feel invincible because of the amount of healing this guy's able to do. Even Dabura could actually be pretty useful with this baby kind of build, powering him up. So this is pretty much just like, again, the best option for him. Of course, you know, landing an attacks on enemy heroes with 2 skills within 2 seconds with Pursuer is not difficult to get with Baby. So he just does so much extra energy damage with those Ki Blasts. And yeah, I mean, this guy, he runs full red and he just makes your ally invincible. So Oob is another character that doesn't get defense up on his skills. So because of that, I actually do run Snowball, Solid Barrier, and then a defense up on this guy. I feel like that's probably just going to be overall the best option for him. However, you are able to run Giant Slayer, Snowball, and then defense step if you want to go, again, a little bit extra in terms of damage. But it is, like I said, a little scary, and you just got to be careful with how you're doing things with Oob. However, Oob is able to range out pretty decently well. He has a pretty wide range attack circle. His attacks are all able to be used at a distance, and even though his skill 3 rushes him in, he's able to get out as well with the same skill 3. But because of that, sometimes he may be in the enemy's face, and I kind of might like Barrier in that situation. But that's pretty much it. I think Giant Slayer is also, again, a very viable option for this guy. With Season 3, Caulifla is also back in the limelight, a very powerful character right now, as she always worked well with Steel Skin, so she does still run Steel Skin. I also do end up running Strategic Escape and Defense Step on her though. I think that Defense Step boost actually helps her out quite a bit since she preferred Steel Skin over Solid Barrier anyways, and Strategic Escape is just a nice card to have since build-up isn't really that good anymore. You could also run Too Easy if you really want the extra defense for her, but I don't really think she needs it. One reason why I also like Strategic Escape is because she's actually able to wrap pretty efficiently. She does have one of the lowest cooldowns on her ultimate, so she's pretty quickly able to get a max burst off, and it can be very annoying with a ratting build. So I think that Strategic Escape is probably the best option for her overall. Trunks is a character you need to be very careful with. He just strikes when the time is appropriate. Because of that, I could see this guy, you know, hiding in bushes a lot even and just waiting for the right time to get an attack off the enemy. He also does technically have smoke on his third skill, although you won't really be using it too often. With all that said, I think this guy ends up going a snowball, solid barrier, and then backstab. Backstab is pretty good on this guy, especially since his cooldowns are still a little bit on the higher ends. And, you know, even though he has a second skill, it could allow him to spam 3 skills in such a short time frame. The damage that this guy could do with backstab is pretty nasty if you know what you're doing with him. Of course, because of that, you end up running solid barrier as your second card, just because it is the best option to run if you're not running defense step. And this guy does end up running snowball. Though regardless, even if this guy ran defense step, I think he would still run barrier because he just has so little HP that steel skin wouldn't really be too much of an effect on him. But in my opinion, that is the best build for him specifically. 17 is pretty crazy in this season of Gekishin Squadra, and very luckily, his build is also very straightforward. This guy, in my opinion, runs Stratascape, Steel Skin, and Defense Step. Not much really to say from there, since he provides a lot of extra shield or armor, whatever you want to call it, in his skill 3. This guy's actually pretty tanky with Steel Skin since he has a lot of extra HP to work with. Defense Step is obviously just going to be very good overall. He doesn't really do damage or anything like that, so there's no point in going for those damage cards. So I do like Strategic Escape. He doesn't need too easy because if you're low on HP, he has his skills 3 available, and then a build up is just way too hard to build up. So that's pretty much it there. Now, Cooler is a bit funny because he actually is able to use a card that I feel like most of the cast won't pick 9 out of 10 times, and that is his second card. So first I go Too Easy, then we go Prepare to Die, then we have Defense Step. Now, Too Easy and Defense Step are pretty commonly seen, however, Prepare to Die is not. The reason why I do actually like Prepare to Die a lot on this guy is because of how it interacts with Supernova. So again, with Supernova, you're ideally grouping together a bunch of enemies, and with that in mind, if you do have Prepare to Die, more often than not, the Supernova will activate this extra boost of damage when the enemy hero is under 50% or less HP, and it's gonna be able to make Cooler kind of confirm a lot of kills, whether it's through the Supernova or through his own skills, especially because your other allies are also going to be attacking at the same time. However, if you do want a little more consistency I think outside of those ult turns, you could end up running Giant Slayer. But I personally really do like this move with his Supernova, as it is pretty consistent to get a lot of kills off there if you're calming with your team properly. However, if you don't have a team that you're working with, Giant Slayer is overall, I think, a better option, or even Steel Skin you could also run. So these are my opinions for what to run on Cooler though. So the Gammas are another character that no longer get access to build up, so you need to find different avenues for them to get that defensive tankiness that they had before. And because of that, a lot of people actually do end up running Too Easy, Giant Slayer, and Defense Up on this character. Just a, you know, decently safe DPS build, making sure that you're able to do a lot of damage whilst taking advantage of the amount of HP that the Gammas do have. Now, an alternative build you can run for them are Super Snowball, Steel Skin, then Defense Step, but if you want just a generally more consistent thing, I would go with the first build instead of risking losing any Snowball stacks. Now, 118 I think runs the same build as many other bruisers in this game, which would be Too Easy, Giant Slayer, and then a Defense Step. However, I do think that an alternative good build for her could still be the Season 1 Snowball, Barrier, and Limit Breaking Jump. The reason why is because it might be a bit easy for her to get jumped, and I think that, you know, if you really need the extra escapage option, a Limit Breaking Jump could be very useful. But other than that, if you're pretty confident in your 18, I think that this build would be the ideal one for her, just in terms of like overall consistency. So Cell is a character that is pretty weak early on, but once you're able to build up his bioenergy and get him transformed, he's actually able to do some pretty solid things. But because of that, I do run full defense in this guy, so I go Too Easy just because it really helps him out in early game. Then I also go Steel Skin and Defense Step as well. I think that those cards overall are able to help this guy quite a bit. If you feel comfortable, or maybe you even get like an early transformation before you somehow get your second card, or you know that you're going to get an early transformation anyways, you could probably go Giant Slayer. I could definitely see that as an option, but for the most part, I think triple green is going to be Cell's best method. All right, so for hits, there are two builds: the boring meta slot build and then the fun engaging build. The first build is the boring meta slot build. I do have to cover it because I do think it is unfortunately the best way to play hit, which is going around the map, being a rat, backdooring towers, blinding enemies, being just like a fly, you know? And that is running strategic escape, solid barrier, and then limit breaking jump. That's just going to be the best way to play him, unfortunately. However, there is a more engaging and fun way to play this guy, which is substituting strategic escape for super snowball, then getting rid of limit breaking jump for backstab. That allows you to kind of be more interactive, play in team fights, get potentially a lot of KOs with this guy. That's the more fun build for him that I enjoy playing, but I wanted to bring those two up just because there is technically a quote-unquote best way to play this guy, even though it's boring. Super Saiyan 3 Goku still uses the same build as always, which would be Super Snowball, Solid Barrier, and then Backstab. Now, the reason why this guy uses Backstab is because he will likely just teleport in front of the enemy's face, hit them with a point-blank Kamehameha, and that does count as the Backstab activation. Now, if you want to be a little risky, you can go for extra damage and run Giant Slayer instead of Solid Barrier. I personally like Solid Barrier for this guy just because I think it's just going to be a more consistent defensive tool. But if you're teleporting around all over the place and you feel like pretty safe with Super Saiyan 3 and the calls that you're making with him, Giant Slayer is probably a better option in terms of him being just like a sniping god, but that's the both builds I would have run for this guy. Alright, so for Gotenks, the cards I recommend for this boy is Strategic Escape, Steel Skin, then we also do have Defense Step. Man, poor Gotenks. Every time I look at this guy, I just realized how he is gutted. Very sad for this guy. What I would say though, on a good note, is that if you want to be a little more engaging with this guy, I think he can run Snowball. He's pretty much like a DPS kind of technical hybrid. I think this guy could actually do some decentish damage, right? If you get Snowball off, he's pretty good at getting assists. If you are able to use him properly, it's just very hard to now because they nerfed him like 6 times, but oh well, it is what it is. If you want to run Gotenks, these are the two builds I would personally run on him. Alright, so next we have God Toppo, and unlike Dabura, I do think this guy actually does have the luxury of going too easy, Giant Slayer, then Defense Step. Now, the reason why I think this guy can go Giant Slayer is because he at least has skill 3, which does give him energy defense up, which is pretty good right now, honestly, especially, you know, when we have like Kale around and things like that. You know, Kale probably could just one-shot him through it anyways, I feel like, but you know, you guys get the point. I think it's a little safer to run Giant Slayer on this guy specifically. And especially when you pair him with Baby, he's probably able to do some pretty good things in terms of sustaining, so it's not really the biggest deal. However, I feel like, again, just like other bruisers, this is probably the best build for him overall. So Super Saiyan 4 Vegeta, I feel like, has the most survivability out of all the other tank characters. So he actually is a character that I feel like that doesn't need to run double defense cards as much. So I think one of the better builds for Vegeta is actually Strategic Escape, Steel Skin, and then having Limit Breaking Jump. Vegeta does have his barrier and he works pretty good with Steel Skin overall, just like in Season 2. So I do like this. One reason why Limit Breaking Jump is pretty good on him is because if he's trying to get out of a situation, you could just stun the enemies into a wall, and then having Double Vanish will just help you kind of get out. You also have barrier as well, but I think the Double Vanish will be just a nice touch because having the stun by itself with just one vanish may not be enough if you're facing certain characters, or even the barrier, you know, they will still be able to keep up with you if they kind of know how to play around it a little bit. But Strat Escape is just a nice option overall. You could run 2 easy if you do want 2 defense cards. I think that's fine as well. But I just don't think this guy is really lacking in defense even without like, defense step or anything like that. So that's why I personally really like this build. But again, you can go double green and that works fine too. Alright, so next we have Ultimate Gohan, who is not as tanky as he was in the previous season, because not only did he get a nerf in his HP at the end of season 2, but build up just isn't good anymore. So with all that being said, in order for this guy to live through all this burst damage, I do personally recommend to run Strategic Escape, Solid Barrier, and then Defense Step. I think these 3 cards will be the ideal option for him to just kind of survive through the meta. Now, some people may want to run Snowball on this guy. I don't think it's worth it, but if you really want to, go ahead. But ideally, I think these 3 are the best cards for him to continue. Next, we have Legendary Super Saiyan Broly from the end of Season 2. And I think this guy just does also run the same Bruiser build, which would be 2 easy, Giant Slayer, and then Defense Step. Now, if you want to kind of switch things up, I think you could also go Snowball for the first card and then Steel Skin, but this one will just be overall consistent for Broly. He's just pretty good. I do love using this Broly, just as a side note. So this guy is able to do a lot of crazy things with this build. Finally, we have Super Vegito. So Super Vegito, in terms of my personal pick for his divine cards, would be Super Snowball, Steel Skin, and Defense Step. Now, a lot of people actually do like running 2 easy, Giant Slayer, and Defense Step on Vegito. Now, the reason why I do like Snowball is because this guy is able to transform early on. So with that in mind, you're essentially able to do what 2 easy would allow you to do. Even though 2 easy is automatic, which is very useful and could help you save the transformation, I feel like you want to transform before the first boss or right before it happens anyways, just so this guy is able to have an advantage or make sure you are able to get his ultimate during the boss fight anyways. With that in mind, that's why I do actually end up liking Snowball, just because you're able to get the extra Snowball stacks early on. Steel Skin does work pretty good for him along with Defense Step because he does get a lot of extra HP. But I could see why someone would much prefer 2 easy and then Giant Slayer, because this guy is still a bit, I would say, on the squishier side because he doesn't get any defense up in his kit. So even if you die with the 2 easy and Giant Slayer build, you still will come back doing the same amount of damage than if you die with Snowball and the Steel Skin build. But it depends on your preference and how you play with the character, and that's it. Now, I do want to cover some specialty things that could happen based on the divine draw that you get for the game, as that could slightly determine what you choose for certain characters. One big example I do want to bring up is Cloud Cover and Cloudy Cloak. These do count as your characters being unseen if you're within this Cloudy Cloak, or, of course, within the extra clouds that are around the map. That means that Backstab could be a way more valuable for DPS characters because of the fact that you'll just jump in and you'll be seen when you attack, but that will count as activating Backstab. And with that in mind, you do end up getting the lowered cooldowns, which is pretty significant in my opinion. Outside of that, the only other thing I would say that could determine what cards you're using is anyone that uses Limit Breaking Jump could just switch over to Defense Step when you have a super cooldown reduction for Vanishing Step. It is such a huge cooldown reduction that it is basically Limit Breaking Jump, just slightly worse. So if you already have that built into your character, there's just zero reason for you to go ahead and keep Limit Breaking Jump on a character, let's say like Piccolo or Kale, whoever used Limit Breaking Jump in the video. But you do need to keep in mind that with Defense Step, you can only activate it every 4 seconds. So there's a little cooldown that will appear on the card on the bottom left, wherever it is on your screen, and you'll be able to just tell when you're able to actually get the effect again. Just do remember that when you're using it. Alright, and to end things off, we'll be showing my presets for Squadra Season 3. And again, they're pretty much all the presets you've seen throughout the video, so you can kind of tell which ones I like running, which ones I feel like are more common as we go down the list here. But here are all my presets, and if you need to, you can slow down or pause just to see what exactly I have set up You only have 9 presets. I would probably add 1 or 2 extras, but these are the ones I think I'll just commonly use more often than not. But again, let me know what you guys are thinking. I hope you guys did enjoy this video, and I hope it did help you out. Thanks y'all for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace out.